Hey guys, tonight we begin with a gentle journey back in time. Dim the lights, grab your chamomile tea, and let's drift off to the land of pyramids and surprisingly mundane royal routines. We're exploring everyday life in ancient Egypt, focusing, of course, on the bits that are simultaneously fascinating and utterly boring. Because let's face it, even pharaohs had to deal with laundry. We're not going to delve into the grand battles or the dazzling temples tonight. Oh no, we're going straight for the nitty-gritty. Think leaky plumbing in the palace, the never-ending paperwork of a god king, and the sheer monotony of ruling a civilization for decades on end. So settle in, because this is going to be a long, relaxing slide into the past. Let's start with Akhenaten, shall we? Now, Akhenaten is famous for his religious revolution, his unique artistic style. Let's just say he wasn't exactly Michelangelo, and his rather intense family life. He was, of course, a pharaoh, which meant he had to spend a considerable amount of time on religious rituals. This wasn't just a quick prayer before breakfast. This was elaborate ceremonies, offerings, and a whole lot of standing around in the sun. Imagine doing that every day for years, wearing a heavy crown and a linen kilt. Sounds absolutely thrilling, right? And the paperwork. Oh, the endless paperwork. As pharaoh, Akhenaten was responsible for overseeing the entire kingdom. Tax records, construction projects, diplomatic correspondence, it all landed on his desk. Imagine the sheer volume of papyrus scrolls. I mean, we're talking reams and reams of it, probably requiring a team of scribes just to organize it all. Probably a lot of it dealt with irrigation issues, which, let's be honest, is about as exciting as watching paint dry. Speaking of exciting, Akhenaten's family life is another story altogether. He had a very close relationship with his great royal wife, Nefertiti. We have many images of them together, often looking intense. This wasn't a casual, oh honey, pass the honey kind of relationship. This was intense bonding, sometimes displayed in rather unusual artistic representations. They had several daughters, and the family dynamics are, shall we say, open to interpretation by modern historians. It was definitely a complex family unit, though. One of those families where everyone has an unspoken feud and lingering resentment, probably due to the inbreeding. And of course, there was the whole religious revolution thing. Akhenaten decided to switch the main god of Egypt from Amun to Aten, the sun disk. This didn't exactly go over well with the priesthood, who had a pretty vested interest in the old system. He ended up abandoning the old capital city to build a new one. This was quite a large-scale endeavor. Moving an entire civilization is a monumental undertaking, even with the massive workforce. But imagine the logistics, the planning, the bureaucracy, the constant complaints from the populace about moving house. Probably a lot of complaints involving sand and sunburn. Let's float over to another royal disaster, shall we? This time we're going to talk about Tutankhamun. Yes, that Tutankhamun, the boy king whose tomb was miraculously discovered relatively intact. The world was captivated by the gold, the jewels, the sheer opulence. But we're interested in the less glamorous side of things. Tutankhamun ascended to the throne at a very young age, somewhere around 9 years old. Imagine the responsibility, the weight of an entire kingdom resting on the shoulders of a child. No wonder he might have had a few meltdowns. Running a nation at that age must have been utterly exhausting. I mean, you couldn't exactly go out and play with your friends. You had to deal with important matters of state, like deciding whether the harvest was good or whether to execute a rebellious tax collector. Definitely not a fun childhood. And his health? Well, let's just say he wasn't exactly the picture of robust royal health. Recent studies suggest he may have suffered from several health problems, possibly linked to inbreeding. Surprise, surprise. This would have only added to the stress of ruling a nation. Imagine dealing with royal headaches, digestive issues, and the weight of the world all at the same time. Makes that childhood tantrum seem slightly more understandable, right? I mean, who wouldn't get grumpy if they were constantly sick and burdened with the kingdom they hadn't even asked for? His reign was relatively short, only about 10 years. But the sheer drama of this young king's life gives us a glimpse into the behind-the-scenes stresses of ancient Egyptian royalty. We always think of pharaohs as powerful and immortal, but Tutankhamun's life, even in its relative brevity and tragic end, reminds us that they were still, at their core, human beings, navigating the difficulties of life, death, and very real health problems. Now let's talk about Cleopatra. The name conjures images of breathtaking beauty, seductive power, and scandalous affairs. But even Cleopatra had to deal with the everyday drudgery of life. Yes, even the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt had to take care of mundane tasks like keeping her famous makeup on point. We have evidence of Cleopatra's extensive cosmetics collection. Think jars of kohl, pots of various pigments, and bottles of scented oils. This wasn't just a quick swipe of mascara. This was a complex ritual. Applying all that makeup every day before going out and ruling would certainly have been tedious. And let's not forget the hair. We're talking elaborate hairstyles, probably requiring a team of hairdressers. Imagine sitting for hours while someone meticulously braids and styles your hair. Sounds like a real relaxing Sunday afternoon, right? And the politics. Oh, the endless political maneuvering. Cleopatra was constantly juggling alliances, dealing with rebellious subjects, and fending off the encroaching might of the Roman Empire. It was a stressful job requiring constant diplomacy, and probably a lot of wine and anxiety to manage all of it. After a hard day of intense political negotiations, I would certainly not want to have to sit through that long makeup routine. And of course, the love life. Cleopatra is famous for her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, but these weren't just romantic affairs. They were high-stakes political alliances. Imagine the pressure of maintaining a relationship while simultaneously trying to secure the future of your kingdom. Not exactly a relaxing date night scenario, is it? It was quite simply a constant political and logistical minefield. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the surprisingly mundane, yet often stressful aspects of daily life for some of ancient Egypt's most famous figures. Even pharaohs had to deal with paperwork, family dramas, and tedious beauty routines. Now, close your eyes, let the soothing sounds of my voice wash over you, and drift off to sleep. Sweet dreams. The flickering lamplight cast long shadows across the papyrus scrolls scattered across my writing table. The scent of incense, meant to soothe the anxieties of the day, did little to quell the persistent thrumming headache that pulsed behind my eyes. Another day, another mountain of administrative tasks conquered, or at least partially conquered. There's always more, always. This particular evening, the pressing issue wasn't a rebellious vizier or a dwindling grain supply, but rather the seemingly endless debate surrounding the upcoming Nile inundation festival. The festival, a cornerstone of our religious calendar and a vital celebration of the life-giving river, was traditionally a lavish affair. This year, however, the treasury was slightly leaner than usual. Several ambitious construction projects, my own pet projects, I confess, though vital to securing the future of Thebes, had dipped into our reserves considerably. The arguments raged on for days. Mercare, my chief architect, advocated for a scaled-down version, focusing on the essential religious rituals and cutting back on the elaborate floats and theatrical performances. He presented a meticulously detailed budget, each entry justified with an almost painful precision. Then came Ipe, my esteemed high priest, whose arguments were less concerned with practicalities and more with the potential wrath of the gods should we dare to diminish the splendor of their celebration. He insisted that any reduction would be viewed as a sign of disrespect, a sacrilege that would invite divine retribution, perhaps in the form of a poor Nile flood, an event that would cripple our nation. His words, though dripping with religious fervor, were tinged with a subtle undercurrent of political maneuvering. Ipe, for all his piety, was not above using divine favor as a lever of power. Between Mercare's spreadsheets and Ipe's pronouncements, I found myself caught in the middle, navigating the treacherous waters of compromise. The solution, as always, lay somewhere in the intricate balance of maintaining religious piety and fiscal responsibility. I spent hours poring over the proposals, reviewing the accounts, consulting with various advisors, each offering their own biased perspectives. The weight of responsibility, the knowledge that even the smallest decision could have far-reaching consequences, pressed down on me. Evenings were rarely relaxing. While Nefertari, my beloved queen, would attempt to ease the tension with light-hearted conversation or a game of Senate, my mind would often drift back to the day's challenges. She too carried the weight of her own responsibilities, overseeing the royal household, managing the extensive royal estates, and attending to her own intricate beauty rituals. She'd always tell me that it wasn't easy being a queen, and indeed it wasn't. The court was a breeding ground for whispers, rumors, and veiled insults, a constant battle of wills and alliances, where even the most trusted advisor could harbor hidden agendas. One evening, after another grueling session with the festival committee, Nefertari found me slumped over my writing desk, the faint scent of papyrus and exhaustion clinging to me like a second skin. She approached me silently, her movements as graceful as the Nile's current, and gently placed the cool cloth on my forehead. "My love," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm on my frayed nerves. "You look as though you've wrestled with the god Set himself." I chuckled wearily. It was nearly as taxing, though I suspect Set wouldn't require such meticulous accounting. She smiled, a radiant expression that always managed to pierce the gloom. "She probably wouldn't need such meticulous accounting," she said. "But even Set needs to balance his budget, wouldn't you agree? Come, let us leave these scrolls for tonight. The moon is full, and the gardens await." We spent the remainder of the evening strolling through the moonlit gardens, the cool night air a welcome relief from the stuffy atmosphere of the palace. The fragrant blossoms, the gentle murmur of the fountains, the distant sounds of the nightingales. It was a temporary respite, a brief escape from the relentless pressures of kingship. But even in that tranquil setting, my mind continued to work, quietly assessing, calculating, planning. The Nile Inundation Festival, after all, was but one of the countless challenges that awaited me. The next day, I finally reached a compromise, a slightly scaled-down version of the festival, one that respected both the gods and the treasury. The religious ceremonies would remain intact, although some of the extravagant decorations and theatrical performances would be simplified. In return, I secured the promise of additional contributions from several wealthy nobles, who, having been strategically influenced, willingly provided the necessary funds to ensure a spectacle worthy of our nation. It was a delicate balance, a carefully woven tapestry of compromise and subtle manipulation, but it worked, at least for now. The relief was palpable, the weight lifted from my shoulders. The sense of accomplishment, however fleeting, was immensely satisfying. It's this continuous tug-of-war between idealism and pragmatism, between piety and political realities, that defines my days. The endless flow of decisions, small and large, that shape the destiny of my kingdom. It's a demanding life, fraught with complexities and challenges, yet not without moments of quiet beauty and profound satisfaction. The challenge is finding the balance, finding the harmony amidst the chaos. Later that week, I found myself staring out at the Nile, its waters reflecting the sunset. The upcoming festival loomed, its preparations a testament to the intricate dance of power, politics, and piety. Even the most powerful pharaohs must navigate the labyrinthine world of bureaucracy, constantly striving to maintain a delicate balance of maintaining order while attending to the various demands and pressures that shape their reign. It's exhausting, but somehow strangely fulfilling. The kingdom, for all its complexities, is my kingdom. And as I gaze out at the majestic Nile, I feel a profound sense of responsibility, a silent commitment to safeguard its future, a future shaped not just by grand pronouncements, but by the countless smaller, often overlooked decisions. The cycle will continue, the problems will evolve, and yet the rhythm of ruling will always be the same. Each day, a new set of challenges. Each night, a moment of quiet reflection before the dawn breaks, bringing with it a fresh wave of responsibilities. Sleep, even for a pharaoh, is a temporary respite. Tomorrow, the work begins anew. The dawn arrived not with the gentle caress of sunrise, but with the sharp, insistent clang of bronze on bronze. The rhythmic hammering, emanating from the workshops nestled within the sprawling city walls, was a familiar lullaby to Amenhotep III. It spoke of industry, of progress, of a kingdom forging its own destiny, one meticulously crafted object at a time. He awoke not to the chirping of birds, but to the industrious hum of his nation, a sound that both reassured and challenged him in equal measure. He rose, the cool linen sheets clinging briefly to his skin before he shrugged them aside. The day's agenda was already etched in his mind, a carefully constructed tapestry woven from reports, petitions, and the urgent whispers of his advisors. The first task was always the same: reviewing the daily reports from the scribes. Thousands of papyri, meticulously detailed accounts of grain harvests, tax collections, building projects, and the ebb and flow of trade along the Nile formed a chaotic yet essential river of information that fed the lifeblood of the kingdom. Today, the Nile itself was a source of both celebration and concern. The annual inundation had been bountiful, promising a plentiful harvest, but the sheer volume of water had also caused some localized flooding in the southern provinces. Relief efforts were already underway, but the logistical challenges were immense, demanding a delicate balance between swift action and efficient resource allocation. He scribbled notes on the margins of the reports, delegating tasks to his vizier, Amen-Mos, a man as reliable as the rising sun. Amen-Mos was more than a trusted advisor. He was a silent partner, a shrewd strategist who understood the unspoken nuances of power and the delicate art of diplomacy. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, a tacit understanding forged through years of shared responsibility and the weight of a nation resting on their shoulders. Following the flood reports came news from the mines in Nubia. The supply of gold, the lifeblood of the empire's economy and its artistic splendor, was dwindling. A new vein had been discovered, but its extraction presented significant engineering challenges. He reviewed the blueprints, the intricate diagrams sketching out a network of tunnels and shafts that would burrow deep into the earth. Each line represented not just stone and metal, but the lives of the miners, their tireless efforts in the darkness, their contribution to the grandeur of Egypt. He signed the authorizations, understanding the inherent risks, accepting the responsibility for the men's safety, and praying for their successful return. He understood the intricate connection between his opulent lifestyle and the grueling labor of his subjects. It wasn't a comfortable truth, but it was a necessary one. The petitions followed, a seemingly endless stream of requests, complaints, and appeals for justice. Each case demanded careful consideration, a delicate balance between the letter of the law and the spirit of compassion. A farmer accused of stealing grain, a merchant disputing taxes, a craftsman appealing for better working conditions. These were not mere numbers or statistics, but individual stories, each filled with human drama and consequence. He listened patiently, occasionally interjecting a question, probing for the truth beneath the surface, seeking to understand the underlying cause of the conflict. His decisions weren't always popular, but they were always just. He strove for fairness, knowing that true power resided not only in the ability to command, but also in the capacity for empathy. The afternoon was devoted to matters of foreign policy. Envoys from distant lands, their faces etched with the stories of their long journeys, waited in the audience chamber. Gifts were exchanged, exotic spices from Punt, rare woods from Byblos, shimmering silks from the Far East, each offering a glimpse into the vast network of alliances and rivalries that define Egypt's place in the world. He moved with a practiced ease, mastering the art of diplomacy, using his charm and authority to maintain peaceful relations while protecting Egypt's interests. He understood that peace was not simply the absence of war, but a carefully cultivated garden, demanding constant tending and unwavering vigilance. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the palace, he finally found a moment for a brief respite. He stepped out onto the terrace, the cool evening breeze a welcome relief from the weight of the day's responsibilities. Before him stretched the sprawling city, a testament to his reign, its myriad lights twinkling like fallen stars. The Nile, reflecting the fading light, flowed silently towards the horizon, its eternal rhythm a calming presence in the face of the endless challenges. He considered his own mortality, a stark reminder of the impermanence of even pharaonic power. He knew that his legacy would not be defined by the magnificence of his monuments, but by the lives of his people, their prosperity, their well-being, their security. He thought of the future, of the young princes who would one day inherit his throne, and the countless decisions they would face, the weight of the crown resting heavily on their shoulders. He hoped that they would inherit not only the empire he had carefully built, but also the wisdom he had gained, the understanding that true leadership lay not in the exercise of absolute power, but in the selfless service of one's people. The night offered a brief respite, a moment of quiet contemplation before the cycle began anew. The work for a pharaoh never truly ends. It simply transforms, evolving with the challenges of each new day. The sleep was once more only a temporary respite. The dawn arrived with the insistent chirping of unseen birds, a sound that, despite its cheerful nature, served as a stark reminder of the day's responsibilities. The first rays of sun, filtering through the sheer linen curtains of his chamber, painted the walls in hues of rose and gold, a fitting backdrop for the weight of his existence. Akhenaten, pharaoh of Egypt, rose from his bed, the cool linen a stark contrast to the heat that already began to build outside. He moved with a deliberate grace, the years of rigorous training and the burdens of his crown etched onto his frame, yet his eyes held a spark, a resilient flicker in the face of immense pressure. His morning ritual was a carefully orchestrated dance of tradition and personal reflection. The ablutions, the precise application of kohl to his eyes, the donning of the royal garments, each action a silent affirmation of his role, a constant negotiation between the demands of his position and the desires of his heart. He had grown accustomed to the isolation inherent in his position, the ever-present distance between himself and those he ruled, but this solitude held its own strange comfort. It allowed for introspection, for the meticulous planning that was vital to the survival and prosperity of his kingdom. Today's agenda was daunting, as most days were. There were the reports from the scribes, detailing the progress of the harvest, the status of the Nile's flood, the concerns of the various nomes. There were the petitions from his people, ranging from the mundane to the intensely personal, each pleading for his intervention, his judgment, his mercy. He had always believed in the importance of personal connection, in the necessity of hearing the voices of his subjects, even if it meant sacrificing hours of precious sleep and the rare moments of peace. He had learned, painfully, that true power resided not in silencing dissent, but in understanding its roots. His morning meal, a light repast of fruit and bread, designed to fuel him for the long day ahead, he summoned his vizier, a man whose loyalty was unquestioned, whose wisdom was immeasurable. They discussed the ongoing conflict with the Nubians, a simmering tension that threatened to erupt into full-blown war. Akhenaten, despite his inherent pacifism, recognized the need for a strong defense, for the protection of his people. He preferred diplomacy, but he wasn't a naive ruler. He knew when firmness was required, when a show of strength was necessary to deter aggression. The conversation was a careful dance, a negotiation between idealism and pragmatism, a testament to the intricate balancing act inherent in his role. Later, he met with the chief architect, reviewing the blueprints for the new Aten temple, a monumental undertaking dedicated to the Aten, the sun disk, the source of all life and energy. The temple was more than just a structure of stone and mortar. It was a statement, a physical manifestation of his revolutionary religious reforms, a challenge to the established priesthood, a bold step towards a new era of faith. He felt the weight of expectation, the pressure to deliver not just a beautiful building, but a symbol of hope and renewal, a structure that would inspire awe and devotion for generations to come. The afternoon was consumed by a series of audiences, a marathon of human interaction. He listened patiently to each individual, offering comfort where it was needed, dispensing justice with a firm hand, yet tempered with compassion. He saw the desperation in the eyes of the farmers pleading for relief from the drought, the fear in the eyes of the merchants worried about the fluctuating prices, the hope in the eyes of the parents seeking education for their children. Each encounter left its mark, a constant reminder of the vast responsibility he bore. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and crimson, Akhenaten took a moment of respite in the royal gardens. The carefully cultivated flowers, the murmuring fountain, the gentle breeze offered a momentary escape from the relentless pressure of his duties. He walked amongst the fragrant blossoms, reflecting upon the day, upon the myriad of problems and triumphs, the hopes and disappointments. He was, after all, a human being beneath the weight of divinity, a man grappling with the complexities of leadership, with the burden of a kingdom's fate resting on his shoulders. He wasn't naive enough to believe that his reforms were universally accepted. Resistance simmered beneath the surface, a quiet discontent brewing among those who clung to the old ways, who saw his reforms as an affront to tradition, a sacrilege. He knew that the path he had chosen was fraught with peril, that the opposition would likely intensify, that there would be times when the weight of his crown would feel unbearable. But he had never sought the easy path. He had chosen instead to pursue a vision of a more just, more equitable Egypt, a land where the sun's light would illuminate all, regardless of social standing or religious belief. That evening, after another late supper, he reviewed the day's events with his closest advisors. They discussed the successes and failures, the challenges ahead, the strategies for navigating the treacherous political landscape. Their discussions were not merely about power. They were about the well-being of the people, the preservation of their culture, the advancement of their society. It was a collaborative effort, a shared responsibility, a testament to Akhenaten's understanding of true leadership, not as the exercise of absolute authority, but as a selfless act of service. As the night descended once again, the palace fell silent. But the stillness was deceptive. The pharaoh's mind was far from rest, teeming with the concerns of his people, the weight of his responsibilities, the endless pursuit of a better future. The sleep that awaited him was not escape, but a brief reprieve, a brief pause before the cycle began anew. The work of a pharaoh, he knew, was an endless journey, a constant striving towards a vision of a brighter tomorrow. The challenges would be many, the opposition formidable. Yet he remained steadfast in his resolve, fueled by his unwavering faith in the Aten and his unwavering devotion to his people. The night held its quiet, but within the heart of the pharaoh, the flame of purpose burned brightly, illuminating the way forward. The coming day would bring new trials, new challenges, but he was prepared. He would face them with the strength of his convictions, the wisdom of his experience, and the unwavering hope in a better Egypt. For that, he was and would always remain prepared.
The dawn broke, painting the eastern sky in hues of rose and gold, a breathtaking spectacle that did little to ease the tension simmering within the pharaoh's palace. The air hung heavy with anticipation, a palpable weight pressing down on the courtiers and servants alike. The whispers, usually kept discreetly low, now carried a sharper edge, laced with anxiety and uncertainty. The news of the encroaching Nubian army, a force whispered to be larger and more ferocious than any seen in generations, had spread like wildfire, igniting a fear that even the pharaoh's unwavering resolve could not entirely extinguish. De Fast, however, remained unmoved. He stood on the balcony of his private chambers, the cool morning breeze ruffling his carefully groomed hair, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The rising sun, a symbol of the Aten's benevolent power, seemed to imbue him with a renewed strength, a quiet confidence that radiated outward, subtly calming the growing unease within the palace walls. He was not oblivious to the fear, the doubt, the whispers. He felt them as a persistent pressure against his own certainty, but he would not yield. He would not falter. He would not allow the creeping shadows of despair to consume the light of hope that still burned bright within his heart. His advisors, a collection of seasoned veterans and sharp-witted strategists, had gathered in the council chamber below, their faces etched with worry lines, their voices barely a murmur as they debated the best course of action. Horemheb, his loyal general, a man whose strength matched his unwavering loyalty, was the loudest of the voices.
He advocated for a preemptive strike, a swift and decisive blow that would cripple the Nubian advance before it could reach the fertile lands of Egypt. But others, more cautious, more concerned with the preservation of their resources, argued for a defensive strategy, fortifying the borders and waiting for the Nubians to make their move. The debate raged, a tempest of conflicting opinions swirling within the opulent chamber. Tefast, however, remained apart from the fray, choosing to observe the clash of intellects from his vantage point above. He knew the weight of each argument. He understood the fears that fueled them, but he also recognized the inherent flaws in both approaches. A preemptive strike, while bold and decisive, risked depleting their resources and leaving them vulnerable to a protracted war. A purely defensive strategy, while conserving their resources, risked allowing the Nubian army to gain a foothold and eventually overwhelm their defenses. He had spent the preceding night not in rest, but in contemplation, poring over ancient texts, studying battle strategies from bygone eras, seeking inspiration not in brute force, but in cunning and strategy. He had not come to his position through force of arms alone, but through shrewd planning, intelligent negotiation, and a deep understanding of human nature. His reign had been marked not by conquest, but by prosperity, a golden age built upon the foundations of peace and collaboration. He would not abandon those principles now, even in the face of impending war. His decision came to him not in the flash of insight, but in the slow and deliberate unfolding of a carefully constructed plan. He would not choose between attack or defense, but rather he would forge a third path, a strategy as unique and multifaceted as the land he was sworn to protect. He would utilize a combination of tactics, strategically weakening the Nubian army while simultaneously strengthening his own defenses. He would employ deception, sowing discord within the enemy ranks, exploiting their internal divisions. He would leverage his diplomatic skills, seeking out alliances with neighboring kingdoms, creating a formidable coalition against the impending threat. Descending into the council chamber, the weight of his decision felt less like a burden and more like the steady grip of purpose. The arguments fell silent as he entered, all eyes turning towards him, their anxieties hanging heavy in the air. He surveyed the room, his gaze settling on each advisor in turn, his expression calm, resolute. He then spoke, his voice clear and strong, carrying the authority of his position, but also the warmth of his unwavering conviction. "My advisors," he began, his tone firm yet measured, "I have heard your arguments and I have considered them carefully. The path forward is not one of simple attack or passive defense, but rather a combination of both, strengthened by cunning and bolstered by alliances. We will fortify our borders, creating an impenetrable shield against the Nubian advance. Simultaneously, we will launch a series of carefully planned strikes, targeting their supply lines and sowing discord among their ranks. We will exploit their weaknesses, turning their strengths against them." He then detailed his plan, a complex and intricate strategy that involved a series of coordinated actions, the construction of fortified outposts along the border, the strategic placement of spies within the Nubian army, the negotiation of alliances with neighboring kingdoms, and the careful deployment of his own troops to create a dynamic and adaptable defense. He spoke of utilizing the Nile itself as a strategic advantage, employing the river's currents and its tributaries to disrupt the Nubian advance and to deliver swift and devastating counterattacks. He described a campaign of psychological warfare designed to demoralize and disorient the enemy, sowing seeds of doubt and fear within their ranks. The advisors, initially stunned by the audacity of the plan, slowly began to understand its brilliance. It was a strategy that required not only military prowess, but also political acumen, diplomatic skill, and a deep understanding of the enemy's psychology. It was a strategy that was both bold and cunning, aggressive, yet carefully calculated. It was a strategy that, if successful, would not only repel the Nubian invasion, but also secure Egypt's position as the dominant power in the region for generations to come. The murmurs of doubt faded, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope, a renewed confidence fueled by the pharaoh's vision. Horemheb, his initial reservations overridden by the sheer brilliance of the plan, nodded his approval, his expression now of one of unwavering support. The others followed suit, their initial anxieties replaced by a sense of purpose, a shared commitment to the success of their pharaoh's audacious strategy. The coming days would undoubtedly bring new trials, new challenges, but they would face them not with fear, but with the strength of their convictions, the wisdom of their experience, and the unwavering faith in their pharaoh's leadership. For Egypt and for the Aten, they were and would always remain prepared.
The Nile, usually a life-giving artery, felt sluggish, almost malevolent, under the oppressive heat of the midday sun. Dust devils danced across the parched fields, mocking the desperate efforts of the farmers to coax even a meager yield from the unforgiving earth. The whispers of dissent, once hushed and furtive, had grown bolder, carried on the wind like the seeds of rebellion. Akhenaten, perched on the balcony of his palace, watched the scene unfold with an unnerving calm. He had anticipated this. The transition, the upheaval, the very essence of his revolution demanded sacrifice. Not just the sacrifice of the old gods, but the sacrifice of comfort, of tradition, of the very fabric of Egyptian life as it had been known for millennia. His vizier, approached cautiously, his usually jovial face etched with concern. "My pharaoh," he began, his voice barely a murmur against the oppressive silence of the palace courtyard. "The people, they are growing restless. The harvest is poor, the supplies dwindle, and the murmurs against the Aten, they are becoming a chorus." Akhenaten turned, his gaze unwavering, piercing with a look that simultaneously commanded respect and betrayed a deep inner turmoil. The weight of his ambition, the crushing burden of his vision pressed heavily upon him. He was not a cruel man, but a man driven by a faith so absolute, so all-consuming, that it blinded him to the human cost of his grand design. "They will adjust, he replied, his voice resonant yet surprisingly gentle. "This is a time of transformation, of rebirth. The old ways have failed them. The old gods have abandoned them. Only the Aten, the radiant sun disk, offers salvation, offers sustenance, offers hope." Hesitated, his loyalty fiercely tested by the growing despair that gripped the land. But Pharaoh, the priests of Amun, their influence still holds sway. They whisper of plagues, of curses, of the wrath of the gods, and the people, fearful and hungry, are listening. Akhenaten sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of his crown. He gestured towards the sprawling city, a tapestry of sun-baked mud brick and flickering shadows. The priests of Amun thrived on fear, They perpetuated a cycle of superstition and servitude. They controlled the people through intimidation and ritual. We are breaking that cycle. We are freeing them from their chains of ignorance, even if they do not yet understand it. Akhenaten understood the pharaoh's conviction, even if he didn't fully share it. He had witnessed firsthand Akhenaten's unwavering devotion to the Aten, a devotion that bordered on obsession. He knew, too, the pharaoh's profound empathy for his people, an empathy that was now being tested to its limits.
"We must bolster the supplies," Pharaoh A pressed, choosing his words carefully. "We must alleviate their immediate suffering. Otherwise, their fear will consume them, and their resentment will turn toward you." Akhenaten nodded, his gaze falling upon a small, intricately carved statue of the Aten resting on a nearby table. The golden disk, radiating light even in the dimness of the room, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was a potent symbol, a tangible representation of his faith, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. "You are right, A. We will increase the rations. We will organize the distribution of grain more efficiently. We will demonstrate the Aten's bounty, even in these trying times." He paused, his eyes flickering with a newfound determination. "And we will continue to build the temples, to glorify the Aten, to spread his radiant light across the land. Let them see the magnificence of our God. Let them witness the power of his grace. Let them feel the warmth of his sun." The following weeks were a blur of activity. A, tirelessly working alongside the pharaoh's loyal supporters, implemented a series of reforms designed to alleviate the growing unrest. New irrigation systems were devised, rationing was implemented, and a network of informants was established to identify and address emerging problems before they escalated into full-blown crises. Yet even with these efforts, the discontent simmered beneath the surface, a potent undercurrent threatening to undermine the fragile stability of the kingdom. The priests of Amun, driven underground but far from defeated, continued their subversive activities. They spread their poisonous whispers, exploiting the people's fear and desperation to undermine Akhenaten's reign. Their influence, though weakened, was not broken. They were like insidious weeds, their roots deeply embedded in the fertile soil of tradition, patiently awaiting an opportunity to reclaim their power. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the sands, Akhenaten stood before one of the unfinished temples of Akhetaten. The air hummed with the rhythmic clang of hammers and chisels, a testament to the relentless dedication of the workers. He felt a profound loneliness, a stark realization that even in the midst of his grand project, he was alone. His wife, Nefertiti, though supportive, seemed increasingly burdened by the weight of their shared responsibility. His children, vibrant and full of life, were oblivious to the political turmoil that swirled around them, their innocent laughter a poignant counterpoint to the growing unrest. He looked towards the setting sun, the Aten blazing a fiery farewell across the sky. He felt a surge of unwavering faith, a deep-seated conviction that his vision, despite the hardship and the opposition, was divinely ordained. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, that the struggle for the Aten would continue long after his own lifetime. But he was prepared. He would face the storms that raged around him, not with fear, but with the strength of his convictions, the wisdom of his experience, and the unwavering faith in the Aten, the radiant sun disk, the one true God. For Egypt, for the Aten, he would endure. He would persevere. He would triumph.
The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched earth, the heat shimmering off the white sand dunes. Akhenaten, his face etched with the lines of both age and relentless struggle, surveyed the landscape from the elevated terrace of his palace in Akhetaten. The city, once a vibrant testament to the Aten's glory, now showed the wear of time and the creeping tendrils of opposition. The once gleaming white limestone buildings, adorned with intricate carvings depicting the sun disk's radiant power, were beginning to crumble, their surfaces scarred by neglect and the slow, relentless erosion of the desert winds.
He felt the weight of the years pressing down on him, a burden heavier than the gold diadems he so rarely wore these days. The revolution he had spearheaded, the audacious attempt to overthrow millennia of tradition and install a monotheistic faith centered around the Aten, had exacted a heavy toll. The priesthood of Amun, stripped of their power and influence, had become a venomous serpent, slithering in the shadows, whispering dissent, plotting his downfall. The whispers had grown into shouts, the murmurs into shouts. The once unified kingdom was fracturing, riven by internal conflict and the simmering resentment of those who clung to the old ways. His gaze drifted towards the magnificent temple of the Aten, its towering obelisk piercing the azure sky like a divine finger pointing to the radiant sun. It had been his crowning achievement, a breathtaking structure designed to capture the Aten's essence, its soaring architecture a testament to the boundless power of the one true God. But even its grandeur couldn't mask the cracks that were beginning to appear in the foundations of his reign. The whispers of rebellion were now openly voiced threats. The subtle sabotage had morphed into outright acts of defiance. The once loyal courtiers, once ardent supporters of his vision, were now hesitant, their eyes darting nervously, their tongues guarded. He remembered the early days, the exhilaration of challenging the established order, the passionate fervor of his followers, the sheer audacity of his dream. He had believed, truly believed, that the Aten's radiant light would illuminate the hearts of all Egyptians, that they would embrace the simplicity and purity of his new faith. He had been naive, perhaps to underestimate the power of tradition, the deep-seated attachment to the old gods, the entrenched influence of the priesthood. Nefertiti, his beloved wife, his steadfast companion in this arduous journey, entered the terrace, her steps measured and quiet. The years had etched lines around her eyes, a reflection of the shared burden they carried. But her spirit remained unbroken, her eyes still holding the fire of their shared faith. She handed him a scroll, its papyrus brittle with age. It contained the latest reports from the outlying provinces, grim accounts of dwindling support, increasing unrest, and the creeping resurgence of the old cults. Akhenaten took the scroll, his fingers tracing the elegant hieroglyphs. He read of uprisings in Thebes, of the reemergence of Amun worship in the southern territories, of the growing resistance to his decrees. The words painted a bleak picture, a stark contrast to the vision he had once held so dearly. But even as despair threatened to engulf him, a flicker of determination ignited within his soul. He would not yield. He would not surrender. He would not allow the forces of darkness to extinguish the light of the Aten. He looked at Nefertiti, her face a mixture of concerned and unwavering support. "He fear the Aten's light," he said, his voice low but resolute. "They fear the truth, the simplicity of our faith. They cling to their shadows, to their idols, but they cannot defeat the sun." Nefertiti nodded, her eyes reflecting the same unwavering faith. "We must strengthen our resolve," she said, her voice a soft counterpoint to the harsh reality surrounding them. "We must remind the people of the Aten's glory, of the power of his radiant light." Their conversation was punctuated by the cries of distant birds, the mournful sigh of the desert winds, and the constant reminder of the fading power he once held. The conversation led to hours of strategic planning. They discussed bolstering the defenses of Akhenaten, reinforcing their loyal supporters, and launching a renewed campaign to reaffirm the Aten's supremacy. They debated subtle diplomatic maneuvers, attempting to appease dissenting factions while simultaneously strengthening their positions. They discussed the need for stricter control over resources, the need to solidify alliances, the need to address the growing economic disparities that fueled the dissent. The night wore on, the stars shining brightly above the city, witnesses to their determined efforts. The following days were filled with relentless activity. Akhenaten oversaw the construction of new fortifications, strengthening the city's defenses against any potential attack. He personally addressed his remaining loyal followers, reminding them of the Aten's unwavering power, of their sacred duty to uphold the true faith. He commissioned new hymns, new artistic representations of the sun disk, attempting to rekindle the fervor and devotion that had once characterized his reign. He even engaged in subtle political maneuvering, attempting to strike compromises with disgruntled nobles, offering concessions in exchange for their continued allegiance. But the tide seemed to be turning against him. The opposition was growing bolder, their attacks more frequent and more vicious. The whispers of rebellion had turned into open revolts, the subtle acts of sabotage into outright assaults. The once vibrant city of Akhenaten was becoming a fortress, besieged by enemies both internal and external. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, Akhenaten's spirit remained unbroken. He knew that the struggle for the Aten was not just a political battle, but a spiritual one, a fight between light and darkness, truth and falsehood. And he knew with unwavering certainty that the Aten, the radiant sun disk, would ultimately prevail. His faith, his conviction, his unshakable belief in the one true God was his shield, his armor, his strength. For the Aten, for Egypt, for the truth he had sought to reveal, he would fight to the very end. He would endure, he would persevere, he would prevail. His triumph, though delayed, was inevitable, he was convinced. The sun, after all, always rises again.
The desert wind, a relentless sculptor, carved new patterns into the sand dunes, mirroring the shifting sands of Akhenaten's fortunes. The whispers of dissent, once a low hum beneath the surface of courtly life, had swelled into a roar, a cacophony of doubt and defiance that threatened to engulf him. The priests of Amun, their power and influence diminished but not extinguished, worked tirelessly in the shadows, weaving their insidious plots, their venomous words slithering through the cracks in Akhenaten's meticulously crafted edifice of the Aten's worship. They were like vipers, he thought, striking from the darkness, their fangs dripping with the venom of ancient tradition and resurrected fears. He could almost feel their gaze, a chilling presence that clung to him like the desert heat. He stood on the balcony of his palace, the sun, his beloved Aten, casting long shadows that danced and writhed like phantoms. Below, the city of Akhenaten, the city of the horizon, hummed with a nervous energy. The once vibrant streets, filled with the joyous celebrations of the Aten's glory, now seemed subdued, shadowed by an uncertainty that gnawed at the very heart of the city. He saw the apprehension in the eyes of his people, the hesitant steps, the averted glances. The whispers had become murmurs, the murmurs had become shouts, and the shouts were beginning to resemble a chorus of rebellion. He knew the challenges he faced were monumental, the inertia of centuries of tradition, the entrenched power of the priesthood, the ingrained beliefs of his people. These were forces that resisted change with the stubbornness of granite. Yet he refused to yield. He would not surrender the truth he had discovered, the divine light he had revealed to his people. The Aten was not merely a symbol, it was the essence of existence, the source of all life and creation. To abandon it would be to abandon himself, to betray his innermost convictions, to extinguish the very flame that burned within his soul. He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, a tangible manifestation of the Aten's power. He sought solace in the unwavering faith that had guided him through years of opposition and doubt.
He had faced the scorn of the establishment, the betrayal of former allies, the erosion of his authority. Yet his conviction remained unshaken, a beacon in the gathering storm. He recalled the moment of revelation, the overwhelming clarity that had descended upon him, the knowledge that had shattered his preconceptions and transformed his understanding of the divine. That moment, that sacred epiphany, had become the foundation upon which he had built his new world, his new faith, his new Egypt. He knew his vision was not for everyone. There were those who clung to the old ways, who found comfort in the familiar rituals and traditions, who feared the unknown. He understood their fear, but he could not allow it to deter him. The Aten demanded a different kind of faith, a faith that was not born of fear or superstition, but of understanding and enlightenment, a faith that celebrated the light, the joy, and the beauty of creation, rather than cowering before the shadows of ignorance and superstition. His advisors, once unwavering in their support, now seemed hesitant, their voices filled with caution and uncertainty. He had grown accustomed to their dissent, their constant stream of warnings and anxieties, yet he found himself becoming more isolated, more removed from the very people he sought to lead. The distance, he realized, was not entirely imposed upon him. A part of him had retreated, withdrawn into the sanctuary of his own faith, leaving a void that was slowly widening, threatening to engulf him entirely. He summoned his scribes, his artists, his architects. He needed them, he realized, not merely to propagate his message, but to remind him of the reasons behind his fight, to reinforce the very foundation upon which his belief was built. He needed the beauty of their art to reaffirm his faith, the precision of their writing to hone his message, and the grandeur of their architecture to remind him of the magnificent vision he had sought to create. Their creativity, he felt, was a mirror to the creative power of the Aten itself, a testament to the divine order that permeated the universe. He spent hours poring over the hymns dedicated to the Aten, his fingers tracing the elegant hieroglyphics that celebrated the sun's radiant glory. He studied the artwork depicting the Aten's benevolence, the expressions of joy and peace that emanated from the faces of his people. He commissioned new hymns, new murals, new statues, each piece a testament to the divine light, a reflection of the unwavering faith that burned within his soul. The art, he felt, was not merely decoration, but a vital component of his religious reform, a means of communicating the essence of the Aten's message to the people. He walked through the unfinished temples, still under construction, observing the work of his architects and artisans. The sheer scale of the undertaking was staggering, a testament to both his ambition and the unwavering belief of those who still clung to his vision. Yet even in the midst of this grandeur, he sensed a fragility, a vulnerability. The construction, like his reign, seemed to be in a state of precarious balance. The workers' faces bore a mixed expression of hope and apprehension. Their efforts, he knew, were fueled by their faith in him, in his vision, in the Aten itself. Their morale, just like his own resolve, was slowly being eroded by the relentless tide of opposition. He knew that the coming days would be filled with challenges. The priests of Amun would continue their insidious machinations. The whispers of dissent would grow louder, turning into a chorus of opposition. The shadows would lengthen, and the darkness would threaten to consume the light. But he was prepared. He had faced worse. The Aten, he was certain, would not abandon him. He was a vessel of the divine will, a conduit for the divine light. He was the chosen one, he believed, and the truth, however long delayed, would eventually prevail. The sun, he knew, would rise again. And when it did, it would rise upon a new dawn, upon a new Egypt, upon a new world, illuminated by the radiant glory of the Aten, the one true God.
The desert wind, a relentless sculptor, had etched lines of age onto Akhenaten's face, mirroring the deep furrows carved into his soul. The years since the Amarna period, years spent in exile, years of whispered prayers and dwindling hope, had taken their toll. Yet the fire in his eyes, the unwavering belief in the Aten, remained undimmed. He sat upon a rock, the setting sun painting the sands in hues of blood orange and bruised purple, a fitting backdrop for his solitary vigil. Around him, the sparse vegetation offered little comfort, the silence broken only by the mournful cry of a distant hawk. He was far from the opulence of Amarna, far from the dazzling splendor of his sun-drenched temples, yet he felt closer to the Aten than ever before. The simplicity of the desert, the stark beauty of its desolation reflected the purity of his faith. He held a small, worn shard of quartzite in his hand, a fragment from one of the Aten's shattered statues, a tangible link to the past, to the glorious days of his reign. He traced the smooth surface with his fingertip, his mind adrift in memories, the vibrant colors of the Amarna frescoes, the joyous hymns sung in praise of the Aten, the faces of his beloved Nefertiti and their children, their radiant smiles reflecting the divine light. Those memories, once vivid and sharp, were now softened by time, yet their essence remained, a beacon guiding him through the darkness. The whispers had begun again, the insidious doubts creeping into the corners of his mind, like venomous snakes slithering through the sand. The priests of Amun, their power seemingly restored, their influence spreading like a creeping blight, had not forgotten him. Their venomous pronouncements, carried on the desert wind, still reached him in his secluded refuge. They painted him as a heretic, a blasphemer, a destroyer of the old ways. They spoke of his fall from grace, of the Aten's abandonment, of the inevitable triumph of their vengeful god. But Akhenaten refused to yield. He clutched the quartzite shard tighter, his knuckles white. Their words were lies, empty pronouncements born of fear and self-preservation. The Aten had not abandoned him. The Aten was eternal, unchanging, omnipresent. His faith was the anchor that kept him from being swept away by the tide of adversity, the unwavering compass guiding him towards the ultimate truth. He had witnessed the power of the Aten, felt its radiant energy coursing through his veins, seen its glorious manifestation in the sun's unwavering journey across the sky. That was proof enough. The night descended, cloaking the desert in an inky blackness punctuated by the glittering tapestry of stars. Akhenaten remained seated, his gaze fixed on the heavens, his heart filled with a quiet, unwavering faith. He knew that the path he had chosen was not easy. It was a path fraught with peril, a path demanding unwavering courage and unwavering devotion. But it was also a path of profound meaning, a path that led to the ultimate truth, the ultimate liberation. He was not alone. The Aten was with him, guiding him, protecting him, strengthening him. He began to hum a hymn, a melody composed in the glory days of Amarna, a hymn celebrating the Aten's boundless love and compassion. The sounds were low and barely audible,
yet they resonated within his soul, a testament to his enduring faith. He remembered the ecstatic moments of worship, the communal feeling of oneness with the Aten, a powerful connection that transcended the material world. He felt that connection even now, a faint but undeniable warmth emanating from the hearts of the universe, a reminder that he was not abandoned, that he was not alone. The desert night was cold, but Akhenaten felt no chill. His faith was a fire burning within him, warming him from the inside out. He was a vessel of the divine, a conduit for the divine light, and even in his exile, even in his desolation, he felt the divine presence within him, guiding him, sustaining him. As the first rays of dawn painted the eastern horizon, a faint blush of rose and gold, Akhenaten felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not defeated. He would not be defeated. His faith, his belief in the Aten would prevail. The sun, the radiant symbol of the Aten, was rising again, and with it a new hope, a new beginning. He knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, that the challenges would be numerous and formidable, but he was ready. He had faced worse. He had endured. He would endure. He would continue to spread the word of the Aten patiently, persistently, until the light of truth illuminated the entire world. He was the chosen one, and the truth he knew would eventually prevail. The Aten, the one true God, would rise again, and with the Aten, so would he. He rose to his feet, the quartzite shard clutched tightly in his hand, his face lit by the rising sun, a symbol of his unwavering faith, a testament to the enduring power of the Aten. The dawn, he knew, was not just the dawn of a new day. It was the dawn of a new era. It was the dawn of a new Egypt, cleansed and reborn under the radiant glory of the Aten, the one true God. His journey was far from over, but with every rising sun, his hope, his faith, and his determination grew stronger, fueled by an unshakable belief in the divine will. The desert wind, once a symbol of desolation, now felt like a gentle caress, carrying with it the whisper of hope, the promise of a brighter future, a future illuminated by the radiant glory of the Aten, the one true God.
The sun, a molten disk of gold, pierced the eastern horizon, its rays painting the sky in hues of apricot and rose. Akhenaten, his youthful face etched with a profound serenity, stood on the balcony of his palace in Akhetaten, the newly built city dedicated to the Aten. Below him, the city hummed with the energy of a burgeoning civilization, a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of a shared faith. The rhythmic chanting of priests, the gentle clanging of tools from the construction sites, the laughter of children playing in the sun-drenched squares, all were harmonious notes in the symphony of a new dawn. This wasn't just a city, it was a testament to his vision, a physical manifestation of his unwavering belief in the Aten. He ran a hand over the smooth, cool surface of the alabaster statuette of the Aten he held. The disk, radiating warmth, even in the cool morning air, seemed to pulsate with an inner light. It was more than an idol. It was a conduit, a connection to the divine energy that flowed through the veins of his kingdom. He felt it, a tangible current of power coursing through him, grounding him, strengthening him. The weight of his responsibilities, the burden of leading a nation through a period of unprecedented upheaval, seemed to lessen under the Aten's radiant gaze. He thought of the old ways,
the suffocating darkness of the pantheon of gods, the suffocating rituals, the hierarchical structures that had stifled the people for centuries. The memory sent a shiver down his spine, a lingering echo of the oppressive atmosphere he had worked so tirelessly to dismantle. He had faced resistance, fierce and unwavering, from the priests of Amun, the powerful elite who had profited immensely from the old order. They had whispered lies, spread discord, and plotted his downfall. He had even felt the sting of their accusations, the venom of their slander. But he had persevered. The unwavering support of Nefertiti, his beloved queen, had been his anchor, her faith a beacon in the storm. Their love, a testament to the Aten's boundless grace, had strengthened them both, fueling their shared vision of a better future. Akhenaten gazed out at the sprawling city, his heart brimming with the quiet pride. He'd overseen the construction of magnificent temples dedicated solely to the Aten, structures that dwarfed anything built in the name of the old gods. These weren't dark, claustrophobic places filled with cryptic symbols and fearsome deities. Instead, they were open, airy spaces bathed in sunlight where the people could freely express their devotion. He commissioned artists to create breathtaking depictions of the Aten, its radiant rays pouring forth onto the land and its people, fostering abundance and prosperity. These images, far from being mere religious symbols, served as powerful reminders of the revolutionary changes that were reshaping Egypt. He recalled the initial resistance to these artistic innovations. The traditional artists, steeped in the conventions of the old style, had struggled to adapt to the new aesthetic, but he persisted, encouraging experimentation, pushing the boundaries of artistic expression. He'd even personally collaborated with some of the artists, guiding their hands, shaping their visions, imbuing their works with the raw emotion and profound spirituality of his own faith. The result was a breathtaking body of art that captured the essence of the Aten, its radiant glory, its boundless love, its infinite power. This art, he knew, would outlive him, serving as a testament to his reign and a lasting legacy for future generations. But the transformation extended far beyond the realm of art. He'd implemented sweeping economic reforms, dismantling the old feudal system and redistributing land among the peasantry. This had not been a popular decision among the powerful landowning class, but he saw it as a necessary step toward creating a more equitable society, a society where the wealth and prosperity of the nation were shared among all its citizens. He'd also reformed the legal system, introducing new laws that emphasized justice, fairness, and compassion. The old system, riddled with corruption and inequality, had been swept away, replaced by a system that sought to reflect the Aten's principles of righteousness and mercy. The challenges, however, were far from over. The whispers of dissent were growing louder, the opposition more organized. The priests of Amun, driven by a desperate desire to regain their power and influence, were plotting in the shadows, weaving a web of intrigue and deception. He knew they wouldn't rest until they had undone all that he had accomplished, until they had restored the old order, plunging Egypt back into the darkness from which he had struggled so hard to liberate it. He'd received veiled threats, anonymous messages hinting at assassination attempts, but fear was a luxury he could not afford. His duty was to his people, to the Aten, and he would not flinch in the face of adversity. He knew that his vision, his faith, was not shared by everyone. There were those who clung to the old ways, who couldn't comprehend the beauty and simplicity of his monotheistic faith. But he understood that change was never easy, that progress often required sacrifices, and that true revolution demanded unwavering commitment. He'd seen firsthand the transformative power of faith, the ability of a single unshakable belief to ignite a revolution, to reshape a nation, to bring about a new era of peace and prosperity. And this was his legacy, It wasn't a kingdom built on conquest or brutality, but one built on faith, hope, and the radiant glory of the Aten. The sun rose higher, its golden rays enveloping him, bathing him in its warmth, reminding him of the strength that flowed through him, the power of the Aten, and the unyielding hope for the future. The future of his Egypt, bathed in the light of the one true God, the future he would fight with every ounce of his being to secure. The future he knew would be bright.
The sun climbed higher, its relentless heat already beginning to bake the desert sands. Akhenaten squinted, the golden light reflecting off the polished obsidian of his ceremonial dagger. He sheathed it, the familiar weight a comfort in the growing tension. The whispers had begun again, slithering through the court like venomous snakes. The priests of Amun, their power waning but their resentment festering, were plotting. He could feel it, a cold pressure against the warmth of the Aten's grace. Their shadows stretched long and dark, threatening to engulf the nascent brilliance of his reign. He adjusted the intricately woven Keprish headdress, its vibrant blue a stark contrast to the muted tones of the desert. He wasn't naive. He knew the challenges ahead. The shift from a polytheistic society to one devoted solely to the Aten wasn't a smooth transition. It was a revolution, a seismic upheaval in the very foundations of Egyptian society. And revolutions, he'd learned, were often bloody. He strode across the white limestone courtyard of his palace in Akhetaten, the city he'd built as a testament to the Aten. Its elegant architecture, a departure from the traditional grandeur of Thebes, reflected the purity and simplicity of his faith. The city, a physical manifestation of his devotion, was a beacon of hope, a symbol of a new dawn for Egypt. Yet even here, in this city dedicated to the sun god, the whispers persisted. He paused, his gaze drifting towards the massive, unfinished obelisk standing tall in the center of the city. It was intended to be the tallest in all of Egypt, a monument to the Aten's glory, a testament to his reign. But the work had slowed, hampered by the lack of resources and the growing unrest. The priests of Amun, with their vast network of influence and wealth accumulated over centuries, were subtly sabotaging his efforts, quietly diverting resources, whispering doubts into the hearts of the laborers. He knew he couldn't afford to be complacent. He needed to solidify his power, not just through faith and devotion, but through decisive action. The whispers weren't just idle threats. They were a precursor to a storm. He had to anticipate it, to control it, before it swept away all he had worked so tirelessly to achieve. That evening, he summoned his advisors. Horemheb, his loyal general, stood ramrod straight, his expression a mask of unwavering loyalty. Mai, his ever-reliable scribe, meticulously documented the meeting with his customary precision. And then there was Aye, the old vizier, his face etched with the wariness of years spent navigating the treacherous currents of Egyptian politics. Aye was a pragmatic man, a skilled manipulator, and a crucial ally, even if his motives sometimes remained shrouded in doubt. The whispers had grown louder. Akhenaten began, his voice resonant, carrying the authority of his position. The priests of Amun are plotting against us. We need to anticipate their moves, to strike before they can strike us. Horemheb nodded curtly. Your Majesty, the army remains loyal, but their numbers are stretched thin, defending our borders and maintaining order within the kingdom. A direct confrontation with the priests' considerable wealth and influence would be difficult. Maye, his ever-reliable scribe, made his contribution, his face pale under the flickering lamplight. Their influence permeates every level of society, Your Majesty. Many still cling to the old ways, even in Akhetaten. Their loyalty to Amun runs deep, and it's difficult to erase centuries of tradition. But Aye, however, spoke with a calm assurance that surprised Akhenaten. There is a way, Your Majesty.
We must exploit their weakness. Their power is rooted in fear and control. If we can demonstrate that the Aten is not only a god of light and hope, but also a god of justice, we can turn their fear against them. We must show them that defiance has consequences. Akhenaten pondered Aye's words. It was a bold strategy, a dangerous gamble, but it was also a stroke of genius. He looked at his advisors, at the loyal faces gathered around him, and a resolute glint entered his eyes. "Then let justice be done," he declared. "Let it be known throughout Egypt that the Aten tolerates no opposition. We will not fight them with swords and shields, but with the undeniable power of truth and justice. We will expose their corruption, their lies, their manipulations. We will show them the wrath of the Aten." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Investigations were launched into the financial dealings of the priests of Amun. Hidden accounts were uncovered, revealing vast sums of money siphoned from the state coffers. Secret dealings with foreign powers were exposed, revealing their attempts to destabilize Akhenaten's reign. Each revelation was carefully documented and publicized throughout the land, the truth laid bare for all to see. The evidence, irrefutable and damning, chipped away at the priests' authority. The once unwavering faith of the people began to crumble under the weight of the exposed corruption. The whispers turned into accusations, the accusations into open rebellion. But Akhenaten, guided by Aye's strategic brilliance and Horemheb's military might, was prepared. He didn't resort to brutal reprisals, as many expected. He let the justice of the Aten run its course. The corrupt priests were stripped of their titles, their wealth confiscated, their influence dismantled. They were not executed, but publicly shamed, their power reduced to dust. This calculated move, while harsh, ultimately proved more effective. It demonstrated the might of the Aten not through bloodshed, but through the unassailable power of truth. The sun continued its journey across the sky, its radiant light illuminating Akhetaten, and for the first time in many months, a sense of peace began to settle over the city. The fear wasn't entirely gone, but the shadows were receding. The Aten's light, once threatened by the encroaching darkness, shone brighter than ever before. Akhenaten knew the fight was far from over, but he had won a crucial battle. The future of his Egypt, bathed in the radiant glory of the Aten, was once more secure, if only for now. The work was far from done, but the sun, for today at least, was shining brightly.